Welcome to the Optional Boss Podcast. We are your hosts, Josh and Tyler, and this is episode 42. We don't have a good name for this just yet, and we are
What do you mean we don't have I have a great name for this.
Did you have a great name for this? Let's hear it.
Yeah.
Let's hear it. Okay, well,
Souls and the like.
Souls and the like. Souls and the like. Okay.
Yeah.
Where we're going to be talking about Souls, what makes a Souls game, and what other games have kind of adapted into it, and what we like, what we don't like, and just general talk about Souls, but not as a series as a whole. Yeah.
What's a like?
What's the Souls like? Does it have soul?
Steals your shield. That's Zelda.
Tyler, how are you?
Dark Souls. I am pretty swell. Actually the inspiration for the topic at hand is because, everyone's got the Souls fever, It's
Yes,
Elden
I
Ring
do.
DLC just dropped, the Shadow of the Erdtree, and, I'm not playing it, and I probably won't get to it anytime soon, but I have still, I don't know if I mentioned in the last episode I had restarted Elden Ring.
You did, so. Yeah.
But, yeah, so I've been plugging away at that, but not nearly as seriously or hyper devoted as I have last time. Like, it's, you can chop it up to just familiarity, but also like having a goal in mind. I'm pretty much at the end of the game, and I'm about 30 hours in, as opposed to my 110, 120 plus hour playthrough initially.
Yeah.
So, and it's still great.
That sounds about right, because I have started the DLC, and that's where most of my free time has been kind of soaked into. And so to get to the DLC, you got to go a fair way into the game. And so I got there in about 40 hours. I've also restarted from the beginning. Just kind of, I haven't played it since release. When it released, I went for the platinum, 150 hours in the lands between. So it's been kind of fun. Everything's felt like fresh again, because it's been like 2 years since I've actually played. So there's not a whole lot that I remember, but I still remember some things, and things feel very familiar, seems familiar, if you will. And going into this DLC, it's been fun. It's not as difficult as people were saying. I know there was one boss that people were complaining about being too difficult, but not like the hardest boss, obviously. And I one-shotted it. And that's not to flex. It's just, it's just explore.
So this is my thoughts when it comes to like the Elden Ring difficulty discourse.
I'm also wearing
Elden
his head.
Ring is, from the Souls game, which we will get into what makes a Souls in a little bit here. But of the traditional FromSoft design games, Elden Ring is the breakout success by far. So you have many people tapping into this genre for the first time ever, and they're getting their asses kicked. But it was also the most approachable of these games by far.
Oh, absolutely.
So,
it brought in a whole other series of people, right? So
yeah. So, but traditionally, these DLCs have never been a cakewalk. They are always extra punishing for the sake of being extra punishing.
Yes,
right?
it's meant as the extra challenge for the hardcore player.
Yeah, and I haven't beaten the original Dark Souls DLC. Funny enough, I haven't beaten any of these FromSoft DLCs. Wait. Think about it.
What?
No, I never beat it, actually.
You never beat
I got
Dark
a fair
Souls
bit into it.
DLC?
Surprisingly, no. I got a fair bit into it, but funny enough, first of all, even accessing it is... you need a guide for that.
Cryptic?
It's wild. But... It's very cryptic and in the most obscure location, and this is always how it is. It's hilarious, but you first enter that DLC and you're thinking, all right, what do we got? And you just get absolutely decimated by this manticore, and it's just like, oh, okay. Like I was admittedly I was probably a little underleveled. I rushed right through it on that playthrough, but at the same time, just kicked my ass.
Yep,
and. Going through, the next portion of dungeon, I guess you'd say, though the area, for those who know it, is very not dungeon, is quite challenging. It's like finding a new area for the first time in a Souls game. It's got a ramp up.
Old open areas of Souls games were very, very different to what they are now.
Oh, God, yeah. Yeah, you pretty much stuff coming at you from any angle, and you are insta dead.
Yeah.
So the swamp from Dark Souls 3 comes to mind. But yeah, they were outright challenging as hell. So Shadow of the Erdtree, going even bigger than anything before, is maintaining that, but they are at least, addressing fan outcry, and I don't know if they're making it straight up easier or just more accessible, but you know what? I like when people can play games, but don't dumb it down for me either.
So
Find that nice sweet spot.
It is a little easier with the first patch, and give you an idea on how many. So like everything scales with your level, right? So people in the base game were over leveling themselves and then just wrecking everything. So that's where the easiness came from. Where Shadows of the Erdtree is very much on par with like your actual Souls game, where you can't just over level yourself. Everything is kind of on par with you when it comes to level wise. Now they have a whole update. It's very similar to like the gold seeds to refill your or to give you more flasks and stuff, called the Erdtree fragments.
Okay, yep.
Now they did change the scaling on this. Now, how much did they change the scaling? Not by much. Not as much as people actually think. Give you an idea, and I'm going to toss some numbers. Damage dealt before the patch with one fragment upgrade was 1.05 times. And with the patch is 1.1 times. So that's 0.05
That's a big
difference.
Okay, but that is also twice as much as it was.
Sure.
But I see your point. It's very incremental.
It's very incremental. So, I mean... And same with damage dealt, or damage received, because it does change by that as well. So your first upgrade before the patch was 0.952, and now it's 0.909. So let's say 91. That was 0.04 difference.
Noticeable, but it's not saving you by any means.
Oh god, no. If you don't have I don't want to say skill, but if you don't have the finesse, you're still dying. It's still going to give you a challenge.
I'm going to tell you right now, based on my current playthrough, where my sole strategy is chuck rocks. I'll tell you, folks, you're worried about Elden Ring's difficulty. It's got ways to not be.
Yeah.
So, now mind you, I am aware that I am fairly adept at these games, but that said, you just play them enough and you'll figure them out. For the most part, I can't say that for everybody, but
yeah, there's going to be those people that doesn't click with.
Get my ass kicked all the time too. It's part of the game. You just do it. But oh, they are so satisfying.
Well,
but
it's kind of sad because it's turned into like derogatory, and I mean, I guess it originally was, but it was getting a bit of a turnaround. The whole get good mentality. It really is as simple as that. It's you got to practice and you got to be used to dying in these games.
Well, I mean, I want to be better at playing piano, so I would play more piano. I'm a lot better at Dark Souls than I am at piano, though. So it shows where my time has been dedicated.
Have you been doing anything else? Or just Elden Ring?
Yes, actually. Well, Elden Ring is a very absorbing game, but because I've done it before, and I mean, I was a little late to the party, right? I think I played it last year for the first time, so, it's still obviously finding new things. This game is massive, but it's a little bit more familiar to me, and I kind of almost looked at it as a secondary game to, now I haven't been able to put as much time into this, but when I'm playing a good turn-based RPG, I want, like, nice, good sessions. And I did actually get a decent chunk into Shin Megami Tensei 5 Vengeance.
Very nice.
And it's awesome. Like, it's still SMT5 at its core, but at the same time, it does very much make the original version obsolete. There's a few quality of life changes, but they're like small but huge, Like, for example, the first one had save points. This one, you can just save wherever. So
that's always handy.
Stuff like that. Because I played the original on Switch and I'm playing this version on PS5, wow, I thought this game looked good before. This is a beautiful game, and to have it run at a steady frame rate, like, yeah, it's a turn-based RPG, but I still like it when it looks really good.
Oh, absolutely.
And yeah, it's still retains that nice, cheesy SMT charm to it. It's dark as fuck, but also doesn't take itself too seriously. It's such a good game. You're gonna get into the the Dark Souls of turn-based RPGs. I think it's a great entry point, especially too because it's almost a double pack of games because you get the original storyline unaltered as is, right? But you also get a completely new campaign storyline that's basically, at least as far as I've been, it follows a lot of the same beats until certain parts where it changes. And it seems like it's going to end up doing a full-on shift. I think there's a whole, exclusive zone to it. And yeah, I've been really enjoying going back to those games. And in between that as well, I started... Now this one, I'm only picking away at when I got a couple minutes to sit down with my Switch. But Gravity Circuit. Oh, I've waited for this one for a while.
Very nice.
Admittedly, one of the reasons why I haven't really dove into it is because I hate playing the Switch in handheld for action games. I don't like the Joy-Cons for it.
Right.
So I want to sit down with either the Pro Controller or something like that, because this is a very fluid motion kind of Mega Man-like game. It is so cool. But it's also very technical. So yeah, because it hasn't felt good to play. I just don't like the buttons, how they're laid out and stuff. I feel like I'm moving around too much. It's just if I had a much more familiar controller, because this is one where you're using everything. You've got a dash, jump, grappling hook, attack in different directions. It's wild, but it's so much fun. It's so stupidly polished. I feel like, it's very much a Mega Man this is the likes episode. I enjoy this. Where even down to the point where picking your level, you're picking the different bosses and all that stuff. It goes down to that degree. But I think more at its core, it feels a lot more like the Mega Man Zero games. One, because it's a melee-based game, but also, how many... Did you get up to 03 or at least 02 when you were playing them?
Yes. So the next Zero game, Zero. The next Zero game would be 4.
Okay, so if you think back to 03, and they had this in 2, but it was more elaborate in 3. There was a hub zone that you could go to, and you go around and talk to different people and stuff like that.
Yep.
Yeah, it has that whole setup, and that's where you can get your base and all that kind of, or get your upgrades, new weapons and etc. And it also has the data discs you can find just randomly in levels, or sometimes enemies drop them, and they just have it's almost like a little bestiary kind of collectible thing. I don't know. It's doing a lot of things really right, and I feel like I could probably beat it in one sitting if I really sat down and dedicated it. So it's I'm playing it,
but also
I'm not
would you want
seriously, I don't know. It's really good. I could see myself sitting down for a full session beginning to end. If there's one thing that I like doing when I have the time is just no stopping, obviously, stopping for breathing.
Right.
But just a full-on single session Mega Man game beginning to end. Oh, such a good time. So, yeah. But other than that, no, it's mostly been it's mostly been Elden Ring. Elden Ring is pretty absorbed. But I'm almost at my point where I can put it down. So I'll probably be focusing on SMT5 more. How about you?
Elden Ring DLC. Still doing a little bit at a time for Mother 3, and I did start Zero Mission as well. Mainly because Switch is portable, it was online, and it's nice when you're operating machinery you just have to keep an eye on.
Fair point. Now, you've never played Zero Mission before, have you?
I have.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So this is a replay game.
Yeah. Well, even though it is a remake of the original Metroid, it feels more like its own beast.
It is its own beast. Yes, it's following the same story beats and whatnot, but it's very different. And then there's the whole ending segment.
Well,
with Zero
Yeah,
Suit.
that's entirely new.
Yeah.
Yes, is it the introduction or did they add it in because it was a thing? I don't know. But
I think
deep
it was
lore,
the
which
introduction.
I'm pretty sure is, well, all the same, I'm pretty sure all of that lore has been retconned. I don't know. The Metroid lore is like, it's concrete but shaky at the same time.
Well, it is Metroid now. Metroid
Yes,
is
now you've
Metroid is a
become
woman.
Metroid. Yes, Metroid is the girl all along.
They finally they took all the jokes and said, "Let's make this canon."
Yeah, and it was so badass.
It was.
I really want to play Dread again.
Dread was great, and Prime 4 announced.
Yeah,
so,
but
let's get into the topic at hand, and let me cue up some music, and we will get straight to it. So what puts the soul in a game, Tyler? Obviously, we're gonna touch on the FromSoft. We aren't gonna make this a dedicated FromSoft episode by any means, but obviously we have to start with where the Souls series kind of started, and that was obviously Demon Souls. Although you could argue that the culmination of everything that they've had beforehand kind of is what led to Demon Souls in the Souls series, because
very much so.
There was Kingsfield, and it's kind of funny. I know I mentioned on another episode before, like Kingsfield. You look at it. For anyone who doesn't know, it's more about the exploration and wandering around. The combat is terrible, and the bosses are just it's beyond brutal. And now it's like, yes, the exploration's still there in Souls games and everything, especially Elden Ring. Holy shit. But it was the bosses that you wanted to get to. They become very memorable. Again, minusing Elden Ring.
In all even you and all of the enemies in Kingsfield move like bumper cars.
Oh god, it is. It's horrible movement. And I do want to go.
It's so charming though.
It is, and I want to get through one of them, even if it's Eternal Ring. Because some fantasies don't have to be final.
I haven't. Wow, and that did not get them the sales they were hoping.
No, it did not.
I've not played a Kingsfield, but I am very fond of classic first-person RPGs.
Yeah.
So, and I feel like Kingsfield was like, we're gonna do that, but we're gonna put a more action spin on it. Not unlike, because I mean, Elder Scrolls has been doing this for years, but it was a similar take to something like that, but just brutally difficult and painfully obtuse. Like, there was quests, but it wasn't, oh, knight, find my key and get in my cellar and fight the bones I left.
Yeah,
it's
it
more
is
like
quest very
you'll
much
find
like
a
you
guy
see in the Souls
crying,
series.
and he mentions how his wife is dead, and then like 12 hours later in the game, you find this medallion. So you take this medallion, you hold it up against this wall, and then suddenly you have a new boss. I don't know. That's basically a sloppy explanation as to how you can find... And there's way more cryptic shit in these games.
Well, yeah, it gives Zelda 1 a run for its money.
But, things like Kingsfield, and even though Demon Souls is the first true Souls game and carries the Souls title, I think Dark Souls is really where the Souls term derives mostly, because Demon Souls very much felt like the prototype to what they would become, right? And so...
Well, Demon Souls did not have a... Like, it had good reception over in Japan, as far as I know, but they did not get a good reception over here in North America. And it wasn't until Dark Souls, and they kind of had to fight for Dark Souls to actually come out in North America to get proper publishing rights through Bandai.
Well, the thing is, the original Demon Souls, that was published by Atlas, and anyone who knows Atlas back in the day, like everything they made is limited print as fuck, and also gets next to no advertisement. Like, I only know Atlas because I knew Atlas. That's the most hipster way to put it, but it's the only way I can explain what being an Atlas fan back in the day was like. So, because it was just, you just had to know. And then for Dark Souls and Beyond, they were being published by Bandai Namco, which still around the original Dark Souls' release wasn't nearly the juggernaut they were today. Like, they were still a big company, but not as much of a household name, right?
Sure.
So, like, at least when I think Bandai Namco back in the day, I don't even think it was Bandai Namco. It might have just been one of the two. But
yeah, because they were
I
different
digress.
companies.
You're
I mean,
thinking-
like, you got the Namco museums who have all the Pac-Mans and whatnot.
Yeah, Namco is like a legendary Atari long franchise. That's where Bandai used to be like they do a lot of like Japanese licensed stuff, like all of your anime games and stuff like that would always be Bandai. Things like that. So they weren't as quite, but they're still much easier to get things published than Atlas was, or a much broader scale.
Oh, absolutely.
So yeah, Dark Souls was definitely a little bit more recognizable, and it also, it gained traction. It had the original Zelda effect, which is, I believe, what the creator's intention was, where like, this game is going to be incredibly difficult and hard to navigate, so I want people to talk to each other. And then from there, it gained its reputation.
Yep. And
so,
yeah,
what?
The difficulty, like everything about the Souls series is just, it's how it took off, and FromSoft's success from it is just absolutely bizarre. Because there is no, we're going to be getting into it later, and I was going to say there is no games like it. Now there are, but at the time there was no game like it, and even for like a good while afterwards. And now it's turned into its own genre, right? And obviously, like,
so
we have the Souls games, but it's almost like the FromSoft games, FromSoft like, if you will. Because, like, you also got to think Bloodborne, which was published by Sony, I think. It was just straight up Sony.
Yeah.
And,
not technically a Souls game, but also very a Souls
it is
game.
very much a Souls game, but it's not a Souls named game. Same with Sekiro. I mean, Sekiro has a lot more differences, but it still holds that Souls principle. And
does Elden Ring.
Elden Ring, yeah. Elden Ring more so than Sekiro, to be honest.
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny how, like, Sekiro is still known as the Souls-like Blood Soul hero. I don't know what the kids are calling it now. But
so here's an interesting question for you. What, to your recollection, was the first kind of game, and I'm not talking about the meme, we'll talk about the meme later, but what was the first game that you might have ever had compared to Dark Souls in any way, shape, or form?
Oh God. Like that I can think of or know of?
So for myself, like, basically, like, I didn't know anything about the Souls games, and at this point, I didn't really find out what they were other than the whole Dark Souls hard thing. Till around like Dark Souls 3.
That's a whole phenomenon too by itself, right? Like, it's why do you play these games? Because they're difficult. They're hard. And it's like, well, okay, where's the fun in that? And it's one of those things that, like, we've even tried to explain to some friends, and it took a while for some of them to get it in there and start. Well, now it's taken over some of their lives, but it's
happens.
It really is its own thing. It's hard to describe in a sense, because once it starts clicking with you, it clicks with you. It's easy enough to say, yeah, it's a difficult game. Well, so's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles for the NES.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. It is the Dark Souls of Turtles. My first game to have compared to Dark Souls was something that I had already put a bunch of time into, and that was actually Monster Hunter. And it's weird that Monster Hunter doesn't really come up in the conversations of Souls-like. I think it's carved way too much of its own identity, right?
Yeah.
But it was, the fact that it's got the brutal challenge, and then there's a couple other aspects, like dodge rolling and stamina management and things like that feel pretty fundamental to the Souls genre, right?
Yep.
So me thinking, oh yeah, I've played lots of Monster Hunter, I should be great at Souls. No.
No.
But it's weird when I think back to like when I first started playing Monster Hunter. Like now I can almost pick up any iteration, and once I learned like the differences they made, it's like putting on an old pair of shoes. Like I just go in and kill things. But I was getting like I remember for like 4 hours getting my ass absolutely handed to me by like the tutorial monster in Monster Hunter Generations, and it's this stupid fucking kangaroo bird was called the Great Macaw, a fucking asshole. But it was that same kind of like I don't know. There's this weird sense of accomplishment from building yourself up and then overcoming these challenges, right?
And that's the beauty thing of the FromSoft games, right? Is it poses a challenge. It doesn't hold your hand. It gives you tools that to be able to overcome this challenge, and it's up to you to actually execute it. And that's
Yes.
there's always going to be the debate on whether they should put in easy modes and whatnot. And it's like, well, just contain yourself from using an easy. I'm sorry, there's moments that I just cannot. If I'm frustrated and I don't get in the right mindhead, I'm glad there's no difficulty options because of that. But at the same time, I wish there was so more people could enjoy what I'm enjoying. And it's like this internal conflict in that sense. But the if there was an easy mode, I don't think the ability for I don't think these games would be as popular and as good as they are because you're losing that ability for satisfaction. And then you're also going to get the idiots that are like, "Oh, I played on the hardest difficulty." Right? And it's
No, I like it when there's a single base difficulty, right?
everything is
It's, I don't
designed the
know,
way it's intended.
Well, and that's how I like playing a video game. Like, it's not terribly often, unless I'm absolutely, like, super into the gameplay. I don't often go back for a hard mode run of something. I'll do a New Game Plus. That's a little different. But, like, you know, I beat it and now I'll beat it on hard. That, I don't know. I like the handcrafted, developer-intended experience. And to me, that's typically normal, unless, of course, on the menu, like, it says otherwise, right?
Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
I know there's been games, it's like, I'll change up difficulty midway through just because, whatever. It's there. I just want to enjoy it now. And it kind of sucks because it's not that I'm easy to give up on myself, but at the same time, it's like, okay, I'm done with this frustrating bit. I can surpass it. Right?
But also, to see that in more of a quality of life light, it's one of those things where I don't want to stop enjoying this game, but this is a portion that may make me put it down.
Yes, and this is also like an accessibility option, right? So, and I don't want to be, I don't want to say
down on
gatekeeping,
accessibility.
gatekeeping accessibility, but at the same time, I'm also glad that it's just one difficulty. Everyone's dealing with it the same way, and it forces you to overcome those obstacles, not just dance around it. Great example was Final Fantasy Rebirth when I was doing the Gilgamesh fights, where I had to do the summon fights, and it's like, well, this is too hard. I tried a bunch of times in normal. I'm not. I could have gone away, grinded a bit, come back. No, I just dumped it down to easy and then put it back up to normal afterwards. It's like, yeah, whatever. And it was so simple as it's there.
Sometimes you just want to get through the game, right?
Where with these, it's I have to overcome, and it gives me a whole other mindset. Like I don't even think about, oh, I wish this had an easier mode or something. I just, okay, I'm determined. What did I do wrong? And it's like I'm more critical on my gameplay style because I'm forced into that scenario. It really is an internal struggle because morals say yes, have an easy mode. Myself, no, I'm so glad it doesn't.
No, it's like the rewind feature on a lot of retro games where you go into it saying, I'm not going to use it. And then you're like, all right, well, that was a pretty easy loss. I think I'll just, and then you end up abusing it like some kind of terrible drug addict.
Right? Yeah. And that's the same kind of idea.
The struggle is real.
Although, like, one thing I do appreciate with a scenario like that is like save states. Maybe not rewind, but save states. Like having the ability, think about some of those old games. You spend 10, 15 minutes with 3 lives in a level, and then you die, and you have to restart at the very beginning, instead of the checkpoints that you've gathered along the way. Take like a Castlevania, for example. Fuck going back to all the way to the beginning. Like it can be used in a time saver sense, and it can also be used as a gimmicky bullshit thing. So it really
I
comes down to
am
how
an
you use it.
emulation kid, and I have no shame in saying I got so fast at setting up a save point that I'd be doing them by the fucking frame.
See, that's one of those bullshit ways.
Yep, but I can still say that I did it, and I am not ashamed to admit it. Nowadays, I like to play a little bit more Honor, but at the same time, Mega Man on a mouse and keyboard's hard. So, yeah.
Really depends on
Yeah.
what kind of game
But
we're playing. But yeah, like games were difficult back in the day. We had no problem with them. Now there's so many like different ways for accessibility, and then yeah, here comes FromSoft with no real accessibility when it comes to difficulty. Although you could also argue like Elden Ring has Mimic Tier, and you know what? I will fully abuse Mimic Tier. It's in the game. It's to my usage. It's not part of a menu system, right? Well, I mean, technically, it's not part of the game menu system. So
you're not booting up the GTA phone and putting in a number for this like OP computer player
exactly
2. No.
So
you are putting in upgrades and effort into an OP computer player 2.
And aside from 2, and Dark Souls 2 is a very easy one to kind of kick while it's down. I just don't have a whole lot of experience. Yes, I beat it, and you know what? As much as I complained about my playthrough, I do kind of look fondly back on it. It was definitely a different experience. Least favorite Souls game, but you can definitely see the upgrade path from Demon Souls to 1 to 3 to Sekiro had different abilities and whatnot, but or a different play style. But from Dark Souls 3 to Elden Ring, like you could see how they increased and gave different ways of making it easier on yourself or making it harder on yourself.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, even Elden Ring takes a couple pages out of Dark Souls 2's book. Like, I haven't played Dark Souls 2, but isn't that where, like, power stancing weapons and stuff comes from?
No, I think they started in 3. I could be wrong on that.
Well, we're not experts here, folks. That's not what you come to us for.
We aren't even professionals, so thank you for sticking around.
Professionals at best. But I think to kind of draw back to, like, where this whole topic derives from, what, in your mind, are, like, the key elements that makes a Souls a Souls?
So there's a few different things that can do it. The story architecture and how it's portrayed.
Yes.
I mean, some of it is directly in your face and to give you a clear, concise goal. And then it's the world that actually builds upon that, right? Not so much driven right into your face. You just wait for a video from Body Video.
For the most part, yes. But I mean, just the whole fact that a lot of the story is told throughout, like, where things are found and where you meet certain people, and obviously you get a lot of this lore from the item descriptions. It's all very up to you how much you want to ingest, because there is a rich story there. It's up to you to tell it. So it's very, how would I put it?
Well, the more and more
secondary.
that you dive into like the stories of these games, you start realizing that like every little detail, every little enemy placement has a purpose. Whether it's
there's a reason for everything,
right? Like, okay, these two enemies are fighting. Why are they fighting in this area in particular? Well, this is what happened. There turns out that there's an invasion. There's always been a conflict between these two parties, and and then it links in with the main story somehow, and it's like, holy shit! Like, how much thinking
or you
ahead
loot an item from
do you
a
have
corpse.
to think? Yeah, looted item from a corpse,
and
then
that,
it's just as simple as like the
from
shirt they're wearing.
Yep. Turns out that was a key character, and they had some major importance, and this is the journey that took them to get here. It's all very much...
So
a story has already been told, and you're there to find it out.
Exactly. And like we were just talking on the Mindy's 3 episode, Return to the Obra Dinn, where you're trying to find out who, what, when, where, why, how. And it's pretty much like that with Dark Souls games, if you want it to be. Otherwise, you could just go through, kill the bosses, and overcome the difficulty.
Yep. So
like there's a purpose for everything.
That's a key pillar of the Souls design is basically a story through gameplay and all that jazz.
Yes.
Another one. So this is one of the reasons why I wouldn't consider Demon Souls the framework, but more so Dark Souls, because that's where you have stuff that would become mainstays like the Estus Flask system, which is
Yep.
where you have a finite but upgradable healing per essentially play session, save, respawn, whatever you want to call it, checkpoint.
Yes. Where Demon Souls used the
And
grass, and you could just get different levels of grass. Where, yeah,
yep,
the Estus flask, and you'd have to
but
sacrifice upgrade materials to start enhancing it.
yes, and the difference between the two is where stuff like with the grass or in Bloodborne with the vials, you can like it's tedious because you can run out, but you can also farm them to a point where you have so much healing that you can just eat grass your way through everything, right?
To an
So
extent, because you could only have so much of each type of grass on you. And same with the vials. You're
plus,
limited to 20.
this is true, but I did find like when I got to that point in Bloodborne, 20 vials, like unless
It was
things
more
was
than
absolutely
enough.
decimating me, yeah, oh yeah, you could pretty much get through most things by
Like
using less than half of
if
that.
you're using more than 10, chances are you've died before you could use those 10.
Most likely. So, so yeah, the more so rechargeable but finite healing system. I think what's another really key? Obviously difficulty, and but when I say difficulty, though, I don't mean the challenge itself, as more so the fact that things hit like a truck.
I would say almost like intricate boss fights and enemy designs. And I'm saying that
Yep.
in
Yep.
an aspect of one of the games that I know we've both been kind of dying to talk about on the show, and we haven't brought up that much. Hollow Knight. And thinking about the bosses, like
Oh.
it can have a lot of similarities to Souls, as based on its story and its lore that's in there. And but then when you're looking at the boss designs and some of the enemy designs, it's like you are learning those patterns of that fight, and there is no easy or hard mode. I don't think, anyways. Um, so it is up to you to kind of like learn those designs, and bosses have their own like patterns, and you will end up dropping your currency of choice depending on the game.
Yep.
So, and that's
Yep.
another staple of the Soul series is you're dropping your currency where you died.
Ah, yes.
And Hollow Knight
Losing
kind of
your
does the shade.
souls or
Blasphemous kind of does the same thing. I don't think it's runes or your I forget what
no,
blasphemous is
so
called, but it
so actually what
limits your
your
FP.
magic, as does
Yeah, and your rune
same
collection.
with Hollow Knight.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, both Hollow Knight and Blasphemous do a similar thing, but instead of losing your experience points, you lose ability essentially, which Blasphemous is particularly punishing because normally when you lose and then you lose again, it's just like, okay, well, whatever I had is gone, but you just keep losing your ability to do special attacks more and more. And it's
Yes,
like,
up
oh
to
no.
3 times, and then I think number 2 did it differently. It just kept piling on. But
Two
now,
did it differently in the sense that it kept glitching out for me, and I would actually permanently lose a chunk of my fervor.
yep. Now I don't know if you know this or not, but every time that you died, it did uh limit the amount of the what are they called? The Tears of Atonement in Blasphemous.
Yes,
So like
the
if one enemy
currency.
would give you 50 and then you died once and haven't collected your ghost or whatever, it would only give you 40. And then if you died again, it would only give you 30.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
That is interesting.
Yeah. So if you don't pick
Huh.
up your ghost, you are getting less XP or Tears of Atonement than what
Yes,
you
because
would
you
be.
don't level up in Blasphemous.
No.
But Blasphemous also has the Estisk like healing.
Yes, with the
Um,
flasks and the yeah, the monster. Monster boy who's
so
reverting.
I wouldn't I wouldn't say that this is a fundamentally Souls thing. It's just a lot of things that go off of its design work. Really heavily feature things like parrying as a core mechanic. Now,
Yes.
I don't know about you, but like for Demon Souls and Dark Souls and even Dark Souls 3, I did no parrying. It was jank as fuck.
Yeah, so like the whole parrying in FromSoft games is very, very difficult. To an extent. I mean, I know there's people out there who have mastered the things, and I envy them. Um, I have because it's very weird in Souls games because it also depends on the size of your shield. So the smaller shield, the
Yep.
easier it is to parry because you get so many extra frames to be able to do it. Where the larger shield,
Yep.
you get less frames, and then it's not so much hit the button as you're about to be hit. It's you got to hit the button so the animation is started, and then you'd have to get the shield in the area where the weapon would be connecting before it hits your character.
It is. It is very precise timing.
It is. So now then you got Sekiro, which is like a dance, and you got to do a lot of parrying in that, and it is wonderful. I will not stop talking about Sekiro. And it's
Sekiro, that's the
greatness.
thing, where like the parry's not very much like, core to the From stuff. They have tons of games that have had parries, but it just very much fits along that kind of style that they go for.
Yes. It's
now.
So when it comes to the Souls games, it's very methodical. Like you are really thinking about your move that you're doing, because they are slower than your standard like hack and slash game, right? So you are every kind of movement kind of counts.
Unless you're me, then you just throw rocks.
True. Unless you're me and just stun everything
time
by jumping and slamming into them.
Yeah. That's Elden Ring, though. It gives you a lot of tools to work with.
Yes.
But I think probably the Dark Souls design that is probably the least incorporated in your quote-unquote Souls-likes is actually the thoroughly interconnected world design.
Yeah.
Now, we can't really point to the Metroidvania Souls-likes because they were already doing it before Dark Souls. That's not fair. Is Dark Souls a Metroidvania conversation.
Yes.
But if you look at things like, you just played through Strangers of Paradise, and even though that one wasn't as soulsy as you would think, it definitely took some inspiration, but it had more of a straightforward level kind of design.
Very much so. Like when you got to the world map, you just picked your next mission, and then it would warp you there. There was no like actual world to traverse.
Like Final Fantasy X, I hate it. Ugh. And that's probably where a lot of people, Dark Souls 1 has one of the most engaging maps I've ever played.
Yes.
And
we've talked about that before.
It's a bit of a cheat.
It's a giant cylinder.
Yeah. And I know I just said, well, you can't count Metroidvanias, but what is that game? Death's Gambit? The one that is like aggressively Souls-like?
Yep.
Yeah. I think in its discovery, it handles that Dark Souls feeling very well. As where it's a lot of like, you can find a massive area that you could completely miss in your first playthrough.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And yeah, again, that is Metroidvania. And Metroidvanias is something I'm sure we'll get to one day. But they all kind of incorporate that interconnected world very, very well.
Yep. And secrets, oodles of secrets.
And before anyone says, yes, Resident Evil is a Metroidvania, technically.
Yep. Oh, that's going to be a fun conversation. Big Souls component here is clearly bosses.
Yes.
They're just highlighting the shit out of bosses.
The thing that they used to suck at, they have made great.
Yeah. And again, to go back to Blasphemous, as soon as you start that game, you get hit with a straight up just Dark Souls style boss.
Yes. I mean, Dark Souls 1, you didn't right away hit the boss. You had a little bit of traversing and like learning how to play, then running away from it.
Then suddenly boss fight.
I would say Dark Souls 3, you end up in a boss fight faster than Dark Souls 1.
That one did come pretty quick, yeah.
Yeah, because you're just like, okay, run. Oh, shit.
Yep. And yeah, that's where it comes back to that, almost cruel level of difficulty, right?
Yeah.
And the game wants to tell you right away, we're not fucking around.
Pretty much. And it wants to set expectations.
Yep.
So.
Yep. Now, here's another... This is obviously not something that the Souls series started, but the very strong emphasis, though it doesn't really feel like it, they are almost pure RPGs. And when I say that, I'm talking about just how hyper specific it is when it comes to its stats and its leveling and its progression.
Well, every point counts.
Yeah. And it's so classic in its design, and that's what I really like it. Like, it even takes me back to, like, like I said, those old first-person dungeon crawlers, where, like, each level kind of felt like taking a pretty big step.
And it's kind of funny, because we've talked about, like, what does number counts actually mean to you and stuff. It might have even be episode 1, which, if anyone's listened to this and listened to episode 1, I'm sorry. But
thank you.
Thank you, yes. I'm also sorry. But like we were talking about what the difference is between like a Paper Mario RPG where you're seeing those small numbers versus the big numbers. And like Dark Souls games or FromSoft games, you put a little point in, yeah, it doesn't look like it increases much, but it actually makes a huge difference.
You've changed from hitting that boss 30 times to 27 times, and that is that much faster to progress.
Because
doesn't seem like much, but it's a
two
big
attacks
difference.
per 2 enemy attacks on you per hit that you get off. Rough math. Yeah, that's 6 extra hits that you didn't have to avoid.
Yep.
That's a lot.
Yep. Nope, makes a world of difference. So
what I know the answer to this, and I'm sure this is going to be just a segue right into it. What game do you think replicates the FromSoft take or the Souls take quite well?
Just trying here, sitting here thinking so hard. What can I say that's not the thing that I'm obviously going to say? That's just going to make a mockery of the whole statement. But I couldn't think of anything. So Lies of P, clearly,
yeah.
They did their homework to a T. And yeah, it feels, you can make a lot of comparisons to Bloodborne, but that's mostly in its aesthetics. It is so much more Souls than anything. But it took the bits and pieces that it wanted to, and created something much... It still feels like it, but it's also got its own identity with things, right?
It like definitely does.
Weapons. It did its own thing with weapons, but the things that it took, like the Estus system, the level design is great in Lies of P. You drop your souls, there's the stamina management, there's not as much equipment in Lies of P, and I did find that's kind of somewhere where they did fumble, is instead of being able to kind of tweak a build, you just got better defense for the most part, right? Yeah.
No, that's fair.
But I mean, they can't knock it out of the park everywhere. And I mean, you are free to try to make a lighter build, but I never found any need to do that in Lies of P. It was pretty good, just kind of sitting at a steady medium for the most of the game.
Oh, that's another thing that Souls games dealt with, was your weight.
Ah, yes, encumbrance.
Yes. So, like, the heavier build, then the slower that you are with rolling and whatnot, which means that the enemy has more chance to actually hit you.
Which is funny, that though a detriment, you can build a playstyle around it, as opposed to where if you're playing like something like Fallout or Skyrim, and it's just, you are over encumbered and slow.
Yes. Well, I mean, when you are over encumbered, because you do have a weight limit, right? Yep. I think it's if you're 70% of your weight limit for your equipment, then you're considered what is called fat rolling or heavy rolling.
Heavy load.
So it reduces your actual speed when you are rolling and maneuvering, and you can't run as fast. So easier chance of being hit, or you could be below 30%, I think.
Something like that. It's a surprisingly low threshold for light load.
And it does not take much stamina to do rolling and whatnot. But you got to think, when you are a heavier load, you have a much higher poise. So you are not getting knocked back or knocked on your ass when you are blocking. Where if you are light, then just because you blocked it doesn't mean it's going to save you, because you're probably knocked down.
No, you're probably going to get smashed to the ground and left wide open for a finisher.
Yeah.
Which, that's the balance. And that's the cool thing, where you can tweak your playstyle, as where, though you could do that in Lies of P, I found there wasn't a whole lot of that.
No.
But they did do one thing that I really enjoyed, which I don't see FromSoft ever changing because it was such a core part. But the fact that if you lost your souls, or I guess ergo, in Lies of P at a boss, they would leave it just outside of the boss door for you. It's like, hey, if you're
Oh
not ready,
yes,
here's your stuff back.
that was
You know,
wonderful. I love that.
I think that's in it because there's been so many times, especially in now Elden Ring. I guess because I've done it before, maybe it's pretty obvious when it's like there's going to be a boss here. But in a lot of the Dark Souls games, you're just kind of meandering about, and it's just like you see a health bar, and you're like, ah, shit!
So
I have so many souls that I don't know
all
what I'm gonna
all
do.
honesty, before we hopped on, when I was waiting for you to get on, and I was playing Elden Ring, Shadow of the Erdtree, and I'm just wandering around this area, and everything's all peachy and whatnot, and I enter this room, and everything's fine, and then all of a sudden, red bar showed up on the bottom, and it's like, oh shit, this is a boss, and I
Yep,
panicked.
I am not prepared for this situation right now, and I'm going to lose a lot of progress due to it.
Yes,
So,
luckily the site of
that's
grace was just outside the area, so it wasn't. It's
yep.
like a 5 second run back, but I was not expecting a boss fight because it did not. It looked like a not as big open as you would expect for a boss fight of said size, of
Yep.
said caliber.
Yep.
Um,
That's
and it was the entrance to one of the dungeons. So last thing I was
I
expecting at the
just
entrance was a boss.
yeah. I just remembered actually another big choice of the Dark Souls design is enemies don't respawn until you go to a checkpoint, which
Right.
I think is something that's actually really good design in the sense that, you can make your trip back as safe as can be, or you can risk it all and try to press forward, right?
Yes, and it gives you that
But
risk
if you
reward
do go
system.
back, you're going to have to go through it all again. So it's like, what is the choice you want to make here?
Yeah.
And that
Do you,
sense of relief when you find yourself a grace or a bonfire or can't be beat.
yes, and it's next to beating a boss that you've been stuck on, right?
Yep.
It's you
Yep.
feel safe.
Traveling
Like
a
you actually get
difficult
this
area.
dread.
Oh, as you progress, yes.
Yeah, like until you find something like a safe haven or a bonfire or a grace, you get that sense of dread if you are getting up there in souls.
Yep. Yep.
Because I mean, you need those to level up. Same with Liza P. Liza P did it very good.
Another thing that Lies of P missed out on, but this is something I can accept Lies of P for because Lies of P has a much more straightforward narrative than all
Yes.
of the Souls games. It is actually here to take you for a specific ride. So outside of some like minor costume tweaks, you couldn't experience like full blown Fashion Souls. And Fashion Souls is if you're doing a second playthrough of these games, probably one of your biggest focuses.
And this is
Like
actually
okay,
that's actually a very good point because anyone who says cosmetics are fine as microtransactions does not understand the enjoyment that people get out of like fashion souls
oh yeah, and I like how it's almost like going to a thrift store.
or
Like you
fashion
have to make
frames,
the best of what you find. Yeah, you know,
right?
it's you just taking bits and pieces until you can finally assemble something where you're like, damn, I look cool. I do not care that I will get killed by everything
All right,
or that I'm a little slow.
little bit more rant on that whole cosmetic thing. If cosmetics didn't matter, then why do so many games have character creators?
Because we're all self
Co-
inserts. That's all we want to be is in that world.
Cosmetics do matter, so saying that cosmetics is microtransactions is fine is negative.
Yeah, if cosmetics didn't matter, we could play as everything as just a blank. They would look like me if I shaved. Just default character 00. Like,
Yeah, everything is Mario
yeah.
now.
So, yeah, not even. He doesn't have a mustache. He's just shaved
No,
head,
that's how it was designed.
loincloth.
And Mario is everything. He is now the Elden Lord.
So everyone gets red overalls and like brownish gray skin.
Yes.
Yeah, depending on your color palette of your CRT TV, that is. He might be black and white for all we know.
This is true.
I miss
What's
the Game Boy now.
what's another good Souls like? Because obviously, like Souls like has become a genre of its own, and yes, it does get a little overused nowadays. Like people are almost tired of hearing about it. I know it's so weird because as a
So-
big fan of the FromSoft games that have brought the Souls games to light, I hate hearing the word Souls-like, and more or
Oh yeah,
less,
it's very cringeworthy.
it's almost because no one can do it just like they did, or they're using it as clout for something
But
that really
people are
doesn't.
getting better. That's the thing, right?
Yeah,
Like, now, we can't, unfortunately, really add it to this conversation, even though I know both of us would love to, but we haven't played it yet. But, like, Another Crab's Treasure.
Oh, yes.
That is one of those really weird cases where, like, when people think Souls for what they are, they think these dark, gloomy, gothic environments and everything's brutal. Like, Another Crab's Treasure looks adorable, and taking something so adorable and making it terrifying is incredible to me.
absolutely. And you know what? They seem
Yeah.
like a Lies of P scenario where they did their homework and they knew what they were going out to make.
Yeah. Something for
like,
themselves, but something that they would be very proud of.
I know not that long ago I compared Hollow Knight to Souls-like. It's not a Souls-like.
Yep. Nope, but it does take some of the Souls design work.
Absolutely.
You know, as is Blasphemy. But then we've got like I really enjoy like the Souls likes in a different genre. So like the more 2D Souls likes. The one that I was going to mention and we'll probably bring up in a future Mindy's, but Dark Devotion is very much as close as they could possibly get for doing a Dark Souls design in a 2D space, even to the point where, and it's infuriating when you're first playing it because it's a 2D game, but you can't jump.
See, I was going to take a guess of Salt and Sacrifice or Sanctuary.
Oh, Salt and Sacrifice. That's one of like, yeah, because Salt and Sacrifice is the second.
Right. Yeah, it was the second one.
One of the two.
I think Salt and Sanctuary was the first one.
That game is, I don't know how old it is, but to my knowledge, one of the first like Metroidvania attempts at just straight up doing the Dark Souls formula. And the characters, I'm so sorry to the creators of the game. The characters are so ugly. They look like bad Flash characters. I don't know. But that doesn't matter because the game is great. It is so good, but so on the nose Dark Souls.
So Salt and Sanctuary was May 17th, 2016.
It's got some age on it now.
So,
I'll give it that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But even it follows that kind of same design framework as like, you know, you get a lot of different weapons, but you can incorporate certain things into a specific build. Like it really closely resembles the Dark Souls style of gaming and does a good job of it.
Yep. So I just kind of, because I was looking that up, I had to pull up the Souls-like tag on Steam just to kind of see what kind of games it's going to give me, because Steam, as everyone probably already knows, has a ludicrous amount of titles on its platform. So, looking at the popular titles, Armored Core 6 as a Souls-like.
See, I have no idea, but I do want to play Armored Core. But I'm under
Same
the
here,
impression
but
it's entirely its own thing.
I feel like it's getting that title just because it's from Soft. Lies of P is second, so
it's
yes,
Soft.
I absolutely get.
Yep.
Another Crab's Treasure. We were just talking about that.
Yep.
No Rest for the Wicked. I have no idea about that. Blasphemous 2. Yeah. Some of these.
I think Blasphemous has been in this conversation a bunch.
Yep. I don't know some of these games. Outward Definitive Edition.
Oh, I've played Outward.
Have you?
Yeah, not very much, but Outward is. It's an I would say it's like. I hate that I'm saying it like this, but if you took Dark Souls and mixed it with Skyrim, and I know what you're thinking. Oh, it's just open world Dark Souls. I'm like, well, not quite. It's more like if you took like the quest and inventory and all. So Outward starts off as like, I think your town's kicking you out because you're in debt, and it's like go in the world and make money. And the combat is trying very much to be Dark Souls, but it doesn't really do much of it, to my knowledge. Like I said, I didn't play much of it.
Okay.
It just kind of went for the combat of Dark Souls.
Right.
So, yeah.
One that I could kind of get behind, though, although its combat not really Souls-like, but its idea, same with repetition on learning bosses and whatnot, Death's Door.
Death's Door is... I think the biggest thing that Death's Door takes from Dark Souls is when you die, the screen just says, death.
Yeah.
But
I forgot about that, yeah.
It also, if I'm not... I can't remember... I think if there wasn't stamina, there was like a limit to how many repeated rolls you could do.
I think there was stamina. Because if you ran out of stamina...
It played a part in the weapons you picked.
Yes, but if you ran out of stamina, like let it go all the way down, then you walk slower, so you can't get away as fast.
Yes. Oh, Death's Door was so charming. There's one that I haven't played, and I see it go cheap quite often. I might pick up, I don't know, if I have... It's hard for me to say if I have nothing to play with my backlog, but at the same time, I think it's called Mortal Shell. And
okay.
It's like, it's again one of those things that feels very Souls-like in its combat approach, but it does this interesting thing where instead of, working on a dedicated build, you're basically, I don't know how to describe it, so I'm gonna say like you're like a slug man. I don't know. And your whole gimmick is you're getting the exoskeletons of like warriors. And
okay.
So let's say, I'm going to use examples from Elden Ring, but let's say you fight a Crucible Knight and you could kill him or you could become him. And that's kind of how it works. I don't know if it's the same for any enemies or if there's like, certain archetypes for like you're fast and you're heavy or whatever. But it is a really interesting approach. And it's even funnier because the other day I was thinking, God, can you imagine if they modded Kirby into Bloodborne?
Like modding Tom and Jerry into Resident Evil 2 as Mr. X.
That is very funny visual, yes. He's so angry.
Yeah. Yeah, going down this tagline on Steam, it's kind of funny. Tunic is great. It is very puzzle-like, and the Souls-like I could definitely get behind. I don't want to say much more because if you haven't played Tunic, do it. It also has the tagline of cute, which, but Hades 2.
It is a cute-looking game.
Granted, I haven't played Hades 2, but I don't see it being Souls-like.
No,
and,
it's a roguelike.
It's a roguelike, absolutely. But it's under the Souls-like tag. One
stuff gets kind of muddy.
Yes, and one thing that I'm actually going to get into, because as people who have been listening for a while know my enjoyment of Ark. One thing that Ark 2 is supposed to have is Souls-like combat. I don't know how that's going to work, and I don't think it's going to work well.
Isn't Ark first person, or is it like you?
No, they're locking it to third person, which I think majority of people play it first person, so it's going to be even weirder.
Yeah.
I don't have high hopes for it, but we also haven't heard of it. We've heard more on Silk Song, and they were announced at the same time, I think.
Oh, that's rough.
Oh dear.
The game will come out one day.
And it's going to be terrible. It's going to be optimized like shit.
I hope not. I want it to be good.
Oh, Silk Song will be good. Yes.
Oh,
I mean Ark 2.
Oh, God.
Ark 2 is going to be garbage.
Yeah.
And I'll probably still play it.
All right, so I'm thinking of the meme again. And, well, before I get into that, what do you think when we come to this topic? Do we have anything more to elaborate, or should we start bringing her home at this point?
I think what we could do is like give a quick run of some worthwhile Souls-like games that we have enjoyed.
I mean, clearly,
honestly, Demon Souls, Dark Souls, even Dark Souls 2 to an extent, Dark Souls 3, Elden Ring, Sekiro, Bloodborne, all good times. Going on to Hollow Knight again. Yes,
we didn't mention Neo. I haven't played it, but you did.
Yeah, I didn't care for it. I actually couldn't stand
That's why we didn't mention Neo. Oh.
Now, I do know that it has its fans, and I've kind of been curious about Neo 2 to see what they've enhanced. but I also don't want to buy Neo 2 to find out. Um,
Tom Cruise is the last samurai. That's my thoughts on that.
oh no. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, we've talked about Blasphemous in the past, but Blasphemous is definitely a good one, and Blasphemous 2. I'd also actually say
Amber Lilies.
I forget if there was anything that you picked up on, but Infernax has a little bit of it in it.
See, haven't done that yet, but it seems like it would be going for that vibe.
Yeah, it's like a Soul Zelda 2.
See, I want to say Haiku, but Haiku is more ripping off Hollow Knight than it is Dark Souls, which is ripping off Dark Souls. So, well, not ripping off, but this is the trouble with this kind of thing. It has a couple of those elements, but I would say it's more Hollow Knight than it is Dark Souls.
Right.
Yeah.
Liza P, obviously.
Yep.
We've talked about that. Tyler loves it. What's some other good ones?
I can't wait for that DLC.
Unsighted?
Oh, yeah. Well, Unsighted is an interesting beast.
Yeah.
Because it does a lot of its own thing, especially with that time mechanic. I actually think, like, Unsighted feels more like a mana game to me than it does a Dark Souls.
Okay, yeah.
Which is a weird take, I know, but it kind of sent me back on that rabbit hole of going through all of the, isn't it going to be weird if the new mana game was Souls-like? Oh, don't like.
Yeah, I imagine it's going to be like Trials of Mana Remake. Just more in depth.
So. That game was really good.
Like, if it was between the Trials of Mana Remake and... I'm gonna toss this out there, and you might hate me for it, but between Trials Remake and Monster Hunter, like if there's an in-between.
No, I want it to be the Trials game. Very much so. I want it to be a mana game. I want, like, do new things, of course, but, like, keep it in the same franchise.
Oh, absolutely.
Don't need another RTS from this franchise. That was a bad time.
Yeah, no, we don't need that. Trying to think of some other games that are good, worthwhile, noteworthy. I mean, again, we've mentioned.
See, it's tricky because
we've mentioned about Metroidvanias. Like a lot of them kind of follow that path now.
Yeah, I can think of a few that I haven't played. Like there's Lords of the Fallen. I think that one Lord of the Rings game was being compared to Dark Souls for a little bit there. I can't remember what it's called.
Hopefully not Golem.
Shadows of no, that's the Dark Souls of game design right there. Oh, because it was rough. Yeah, I'm trying to ponder, and I'm running out of things that, like, there are so many. So okay, for the bit of if you're hungry for those Souls likes, we have to go out of our way to recommend a YouTuber by the name of Iron Pineapple. Has an entire series where he just tries out games in the Steam Souls-like category. Now, most of these are obviously, like, not going to go very well projects, projects, stuff like that. But some of them are incredible. Like, for example, Another Crab's Treasure was featured there when it was in its beta.
Yes.
And there's a couple that, like, people are whipping up. But as far as, like, full-blown release goes, having a hard time thinking of more at this very moment.
Yeah, so am I. I'm sure there's some that I'm gonna think about once we hit the stop button. But
So here's a fun one for us to close out on then.
All right.
Like I said, going back to the meme, what is, just not definitively but clearly, but what is your pick for the Dark Souls of blank? Like a game in a franchise or a game of a genre, because the Dark Souls games are hard.
Okay, so there's a few ways to interpret that, but I'm assuming that you mean like, oh, they're referring it to as the Dark Souls game of platforming because it is difficult and nothing else.
Okay, so I'll give you my example. Kirby's Dream Course is the Dark Souls of Kirby games.
All right. Celeste is the Dark Souls of platforming.
Okay. Mega Man and Bass is the Dark Souls of Mega Man games.
Okay. I don't know. Ark is the Dark Souls of unoptimized bullshit.
Oh. Mario Teaches Typing is the Dark Souls of literacy. That game has some weird words pop up in it.
Yeah. There's also the
Yeah.
Typing Dead, which doesn't have words, it's just letters sometimes.
Typing of the Dead is a funny franchise. It's like they're guns, but they're typewriters.
Yeah.
The Dark Souls of what? I'm trying to think of a game that I've played that's just been like
There-
unbearably hard.
There was a lot of them
Dude,
that was coming out. Like
Darkest
that
Dungeon is the Dark Souls of just depression.
turn-based RPGs.
Yeah, that game is mean.
Oh, it is. That
Yeah.
That's not a Souls-like, that's a roguelike, but yeah, fuck.
Wait, which I guess it's kind of roguish. It's randomly generated, but it's got a little bit more form to it.
Yeah, like you keep your characters, but oftentimes that you're leaving them behind. Nightmare Kart is a Bloodborne version of Mario Kart.
Yeah, that's just an accurate statement. Ooh, that'd be like Crash Team Racing is the Dark Souls of kart racers. So that is a pretty hard kart racer.
Yeah.
It's got some very, very very narrow wins you can get. Stone Soup is the Dark Souls of meals.
Unsighted is the
Just,
Dark Souls of time management.
Yeah. Although I feel like I struggle with Majora's Mask more. Just 'cause the game gives me anxiety.
Yeah, but Majora's Mask you can always rewind and then you just start back. Unsighted, if you run out of time.
Is the Dark Souls of Tetris.
What's that? Puyo Puyo.
I said
is
Puyo
the Dark
Puyo
Souls of
is the Dark
Tetris.
Souls of Tetris. Because I don't understand how to play it.
That's all I got.
Game
Kingsfield
Boy
is
Color,
the...
or no, the Game Boy Camera is the Dark Souls of photography. Yeah, I don't know. I think we got this one pretty well in the bag.
Yeah, Souls games and Souls likes, they're good. They're fun.
They're good.
Fun time. Check out some of the things that we recommended. It's
Yeah.
There's a lot of shit out there, but there's a lot of like, this is actually really good.
Yeah,
So,
look into reviews from actual people, folks. You might find some gems.
in more ways than one. You might find some
Yeah.
some reviews that are just absolute batshit insane.
Did you know that games can be better than 7 out of 10?
No. Did you
No,
know
it's
that
not
games there are some games that are fun that are below a 6. And to quote actually friend of the show K-Bash on one of his latest videos is a 7 out of 10 is someone's 10 out of 10 palette.
Yep. Couldn't have said it better myself.
No, and that's
God,
why I
he's a great
continue to
guy.
say
we
it.
should get him back. Yeah, but yeah, I think I'm good for this topic. We'll definitely have to come back to Dark Souls proper, but at least for anyone at home who's like, "What's a Souls?" Well, I don't know if we explained it, but we definitely explained something.
We talked about what we enjoyed and some things that are part of it. And okay.
Yep. Also, for those who got to the end of the episode, sorry for my raspiness. It's very dry in this box.
Sorry for my random what the fuck moment there. Just noticed that Arc, because I'm still browsing Steam for whatever reason. Arc Remaster is having a crossover with Mighty Morphin Power Rangers.
Cool. Dinozords.
It's still going to be mixed.
Yeah.
All right.
Most likely.
That's all you got? That's all I got.
I think we can close this one out.
All right, guys, thank you so much for listening. Thank you for continuing to listen. If you are a returning guest here, you can always find us on social medias on Instagram or Twitter at Optional Boss PC, and we are also on YouTube now. So we are at Optional Boss Podcast over on YouTube. That's it from me. We've been Josh and Tyler, and this has been episode 42, Souls and the Like. Take care, everyone.
Bye!